Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special day in the parks. Here we are on MC Magic at Epcot, and we're going to be walking around Future World today because normally when I do these, I sort of find a random topic, I sort of answer questions from the previous episode, and then, wander around and talk about news and what's going on in life. But today, I'm coming into this with a specific topic in mind, and I'm in Future World for a very specific reason, and that reason is Horizons. Now, MC Magic doesn't have Horizons. Unfortunately, I don't think any of the main servers do. But I wanted to talk about Horizons today because it is my favorite attraction of all time. It is a lot of people's favorite attraction. If they're old enough to remember riding it, it is one of those attractions I think I've never heard people say they hated. And it is, if you don't know, the attraction that was in the place of Mission Space before Mission Space got put there. And, I've never done a history of Horizons video, and it is something I do eventually want to do. But because I love the attraction so much, and because I think there is such a rich history to it, it is something that I need to take a lot of time to put together. And so in the back of my mind, I've always thought it'd be a good video to do, like, if I ever did YouTube full time and was able to, like, quit my job and have enough time to really put together almost like a mini documentary about it. And I wasn't really sure how to show it and things like that, since it doesn't exist in Minecraft, since it doesn't exist in the real world, and since I don't have any, like, footage of my own of the attraction that I could use. But you know what? I figured in the meantime, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I loved it. Maybe give people who have never ridden it before a look into why people tend to love it and why it was, just so popular. And I figured it would be fitting, while doing this, to wander around Future World. I think first thing we'll do is actually go in and ride Mission Space, the ride that replaced it, and then we'll bounce around a few others and we'll talk about it. Now, it's hard to talk about. I don't even know where to begin. I love this attraction so much. I rode it many times as a kid. One of the few rides I felt like I could just ride over and over and over again, and I was heartbroken when it closed, but I understand it needed to change. And as I got older and thought more about why I love the attraction, I think I began to appreciate it a whole lot more, because when I was a kid, I just loved it. I didn't know why I loved it. It was my favorite ride, and it was one of those things I couldn't explain, and the more I thought about it, the more I was able to put it into words, and now here I am ready to put it fully into words. And I think the short version of it is I loved Horizons because it was so optimistic about our future, and I think as a ride, it perfectly embodied what Future World was originally supposed to be, which is something that was educational but entertaining, something that had a really great look at the past, yet a very balanced look at a potential future. Let's hop on our queue. So to briefly go into it, maybe I'll just balance it out talking about the ride while talking about why I loved it. But it basically is a slow-moving Omnimover attraction. Think, the Haunted Mansion or, Little Mermaid or any of these ones where you get on, it's always moving and you're going from scene to scene. And it was largely just that, going from scene to scene. There was no thrill rides element to it. There's very little, like, virtual reality stuff. It was just, there's just basically your standard Disney slow-moving attraction. And what I think is so great about it is that it was an extremely balanced ride. You think about Spaceship Earth, and Spaceship Earth is largely about the history of communication, right? It brings it all the way up to the present. The older version of Spaceship Earth had a very little bit towards the end when you were descending, in which it talked about and showed what the future of communication might be like. I guess you can argue it still does that a little bit with the interactive bit on the video screen towards the end, sort of showing you what your future could be like, but it's a very cartoony look. But in its original day, it had that one scene, but it was very largely about the history. And World of Motion, oddly enough, I don't remember how much it goes into the future. That's another one. That was the ride that was there before Test Track, and I have ridden it when I was younger, but I was so young I actually don't remember a whole lot about it. But again, from what I've read, it focused a lot on the history. And Horizons did focus a lot on the history. It wasn't so much the history of communications or transportation. It didn't have that central theme. It was just a look at our history of what we thought the future was going to be like. And what I think is great about the attraction is that only makes up about 4 or 5 minutes of the attraction's like total 15-minute runtime. The other part of it was looking into the future. And I love that that balance was there because it gave you something to appreciate about our past, yet at the same time, it gave us something to look forward to in the future, which I think these other attractions didn't do as much. And I think that's important that we got to look, that's the educational part, right? You know, it's not very educational to just guess what our future is going to be like. That's just making it up and, you know, maybe make an educated guess, but that's nothing we know. But we can look back at our past and look at what we thought history was going to be like. And that's what that attraction does. And it does in a really cool way because the premise is you're sort of going into the future. And, let's hop on the ride here. We'll just stay here. We'll just be purple. You know, the premise is you're going into the future and you're getting a peek at what life in the future is like, and you're being narrated to by these grandparents, or they parents. I don't remember if the kids had kids. Whatever. You're being narrated to by this married couple, and it starts off, rather than showing you what the future is like, about them reminiscing about what they thought the future was going to be like. And this starts way back with what Jules Verne thought, you know, traveling to the moon would be like. And then it moves forward and you see, you know, sort of like these turn of the century views at what they thought the year 2000 would be like. And then it moves into the 1950s view of what the future was going to be like, which is a little bit like, you know, the Jetsons. And then it sort of shows where we ended up with, you know, the microprocessor and things like that. And then it introduces you to the future and shows you this is what the future can be like. And what I love about that first part is just how varied and diverse the art is in the attraction. You know, and I guess saying all of this, you should watch a ride through. They're out there. They have full POV ride throughs. Are we just hanging out down here? They have full POV ride throughs of the attraction, so you can watch and see what it's like, and maybe you can open it up while you're listening to this and watch it side by side. But it isn't this unified visual theme that you often get in, you know, think of something like Spaceship Earth, where it's very much every scene is animatronics and legitimate set pieces, and that's just how it is from scene to scene. Same thing with something like the Great Movie Ride. You know, they're animatronics, they're built sets. But here, you were bouncing back and forth. You'd have a scene that was just showing a movie on a screen, and then you'd go into a scene that was an animatronic in some sort of set piece. Then you would have a scene like the Paris one, where it's like these really whimsical, artsy cutouts, and it's sort of almost like a giant diorama. And then it would go back to, you know, it would go back to animatronics in a diorama again, or a scene, and then it would go to like a, you know, giant Omnimax theater. So it had all of this great variety in that even though it was an omni-moving slow ride, it still had something different about it. Every time you were going through, it was a little bit different, and that was really cool and kept it varied. Like I said, for the first 5-6 minutes, it's talking about the past and what it was like, and you get those moments where you go, wow, you know, Jules Verne thought you would just shoot a bullet out into space, and you know, it wasn't totally off base with that idea, but it's just, you get that fond look back of people in the 50s who thought they'd be hula hooping at, you know, diners in orbit and stuff like that. And then it moves into the future, and it shows you the life that the kids of these parents, they are grandparents, are living, and it splits into 3 different areas. You have Mesa Verde, you have Seabase Alpha, and you have Brava Centauri. And so the idea is, you know, you have a city underneath the ocean in a sea base, you have a city up in space in a space station, and then you have this farmland in the desert. The idea is technology has allowed us to turn the desert into viable farmland. And so each one of their kids or relatives is in a different setting, and it shows you a little bit of snippet of what life would be like there. And so you've got them going, and you see like the daughter talking to you know, her boyfriend who's in Seabase Alpha while she's at Mesa Verde. And what's really cool about it is they do this thing where they're animatronics, but the animatronics are talking to somebody on a screen who's a real actual actor. And then the very next scene is the other side of that conversation, where now that actor's an animatronic, and the animatronic from the last scene is now an actor on screen, and it shows video call calling, which, you know, in the 80s wasn't a brand new technology, but it obviously wasn't a ubiquitous technology. Today it is a little bit more so. I don't think we all use video calling all the time, but, you know, you've got it with Skype and FaceTime and stuff like that. And so you had these wonderfully detailed set pieces that show these different futuristic lifestyles. And then you've got the family that lives up in space in Brava Centauri. And then the cool thing is all these people are part of a family. And so towards the end, they all come together to sing happy birthday to one of the relatives. And so you see some person in Mesa Verde, see somebody in space, you see somebody in the underwater, the sea base. And then eventually what happens is you get to go back to the present, but you get to pick how you go back to the present. And that was really cool because you have to understand today that doesn't seem that, you know, amazing, but back then it was a pretty technologically advanced thing to do for an attraction. The idea was everybody in the ride vehicle got to vote on how they wanted to go back. Did they want to go by sea, by air, or by space? And the majority rule winner, you know, whichever one had the most votes would be the winner. And you would go through and you would have this, you would essentially have this short movie that you would watch as you go back to the present. So here you have this attraction. It is about the future. It's about the past. It's got this wildly varied art style that changes throughout the attraction. It gives you this really balanced look at both the past and the future in a way that neither feels rushed, neither feels like there wasn't enough time devoted to it. And then you've got this very, you know, at the time, futuristic and forward-facing ride mechanic on the way back in which you're able to choose your way back to the present. And, you know, throughout all of this, it is a extremely optimistic look at the future. This isn't, you know, a dystopian future. This isn't trying to scare you into doing the right thing. You know, as much as I love Spaceship Earth, the Jeremy Irons script, for the way it sort of poses the question onto the rider as to whether or not they're going to use technology to the benefit of mankind or not, this attraction doesn't ask that question. It just assumes you will. And it assumes that the world's going to be great and the future's going to be great. And, you know, it's all because we can dream it. You know, the motto is, if you can dream it, you can do it. And I think it's a great message to give to the adults who rode the ride, to the kids who rode the ride. And I think when you combine all these together, you just get such an amazing experience. And on top of that, you've got so many other details that make it so memorable. It was a massive attraction. This was, as far as slow moving, you know, Omnimover animatronic based rides go, it was a pretty big one. Like, you know, this is a 15-minute experience. It spans multiple levels, so many different scenes. You're getting all of those scenes of, you know, a look into the future, and those weren't cheaply done, you know. So yeah, some of them were cutouts and they were, you know, very cool in the way they were artistically put together, but you could tell it sort of was a cheaper method of doing things. But then you also had scenes like the, you know, sort of Art Deco City of the Future apartment with the robo butler and things like that. And so, you know, they put enough detail into it, and then into the sea base and all of the different places in the future that you could live. I mean, those were so incredible. There's so much diversity there that I think everybody who rides it has sort of a favorite part, whether it's the past part or the future part or certain parts of each of those. And so you get this diverse enough ride that, you know, people are going to love it because they're going to find something to cling on to. And I think you see that a little bit with some attractions that are still around today. Spaceship Earth comes to mind. You know, there's another one with a lot of diversity in which you can ask everybody, like, what's your favorite Spaceship Earth scene? And you're going to get a whole bunch of different answers because they're so different. Whereas, like, you know, you think about an attraction like Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. Not the sort of attraction where somebody's going to say, well, you know, that third room is amazing, because at the end of the day, all those rooms are very similar and it's a different attraction. So it's trying to do something different. So that's not like a mark against the attraction, but it just goes to show how much more memorable an attraction could be when you add so much variety that you're just always looking for something to love. And so, you know, this is an attraction that it's been gone for, I want to say 16, 17 years now. And I love it more than I did back when it was still around. It's just, I've grown to appreciate it as time goes on. And I've always wished that we got a spiritual successor to it. I never, ever wanted the ride to come back. I still don't want the ride to come back. I just watched a ride through right before I recorded this just to, for old time's sake. And for as much as I love it, it would be very dated today. The animatronics are sort of older. I think the looks at the future, as cool and imaginative and fun as they were in the 90s and 80s, don't sort of line up with what we imagine the future to be like today. So I would never want to see it come back. But I want that spiritual successor. I want that attraction that gets people excited for the future and does it in a way that, contextualizes the past. And I don't think we have that today. I don't think there's an attraction out there that does that. And I don't think there's anything on the, pun intended, horizon that could offer that. Tomorrowland, by and large, seems to become a part of the park that is going to focus more and more on Disney properties. You got the rumors of, Stitch being replaced with Wreck-It Ralph. You've got Buzz Lightyear in there. You've got Monsters, Inc. But you don't have anything like Horizons that is original and gets you excited about the future. I think the closest thing we might have to that at this point is Spaceship Earth. And even then, like I said, it is very different balance. It is more about teaching you about the past to communication, less about the future. And to be fair, when it comes to communication, it's a good balance to strike because it changes so much. Imagine if they had updated it 10 years ago. It would still be out of date because it wouldn't account for things like Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram or all the different ways we communicate with each other today, or YouTube. Like you watching this video today, 10 years ago, it was still a novelty. So they can't really do that as much. But if you did something like Horizons, where it wasn't about a specific aspect of a lifestyle, it was just about life in general and what life in the future might be like, I think you're painting with a broad enough brush that you can sort of get away with inaccuracies and making it sort of fantastical rather than something based in reality. Anyway, that's just me gushing about Horizons for a bit. I love the attraction. Again, if you've never seen it, I highly, highly suggest you check out some of the POV ride-throughs of the attraction. They're out there. They're not great quality because, again, the ride closed in the late 90s before like HD was a commonplace, but it's just a really great look at an attraction that I think a ton of people love. And, this is dating the video a little bit, but one of the things I actually want to do is, and this is going to sound weird because it's pretty unrelated, but this is what I'm doing, is I'm going to Disney in January. I'm going on a week-long trip, and part of what I'm doing is I'm going to have a Disney t-shirt for every day I'm there. I mean, I've already got plenty, and so now I'm just going to round out the collection, so I've got one every day. And I was originally going to go ahead and buy the Buzz Lightyear Vans shoes. Vans put out a collection of shoes all based on Toy Story. They had like Woody shoes and Buzz shoes and Alien shoes, but they sold out like instantly. And when I was on the website looking around, I noticed they have the ability to build out customized shoes. So one of the things I want to do for my trip to Disney is design and get a pair of custom sneakers that are an ode to Horizons. Now, I don't fully know how I'm going to do that. The lazy thing is to just slap the logo on the front of the shoe or something like that, but I want to do something a little better than that. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm totally open to suggestions, but that's going to be my little ode to Horizons. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I don't have a question for this week. Normally I throw out a question and then I put out the answers from last week. So my question, I guess, for you guys this week isn't so much a question, but a request, which is, if you are old enough to remember Horizons, share some memories of Horizons. What are your favorite scenes? What are your least favorite scenes? What do you miss about the attraction? Let me know, and maybe in the next episode we'll talk a little bit about that. If you want more Disney content, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I do 3 videos a week. If you want even more Disney content, I do a podcast with Christine called the Tomorrowland Transit Authorities. And if you like this sort of reminiscing about Horizons, we do something very similar in the latest episode with the Carousel of Progress. So you can check that out on iTunes or on Google Play or on our website, ttapodcast.com. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm at RobPlays. Again, thank you all for watching. Have a great week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it. It makes it that much better. And I hope to see you all next time for the next Day in the Parks. Bye, everybody. Oh my gosh. Should they push the button and find... And we've fallen into Horizons. That's right. It's not the full ride. It's a Horizons apartment. It was an amazing surprise. An amazing surprise.